Hello and welcome to another episode of Faithcast. Today we have our brother Arun with us. Again, I get to share this experience with my wife, which I'm very grateful for. And yeah, we're just going to hear from Arun about sort of life before Christianity, brother, and what that was like for you, your life in India and now your life here in Australia, and then ultimately how God came into your life and then transformed you into the man you are today that I get to spend a lot of time with, that I'm thankful for. So thank you for taking time out and being with us. Just introduce yourself, bro, and what you sort of do in life now.
Hi everyone, my name is Arun. I've got Malathi, my wife, and two children, Joshua and Sammy. I work in IT for a living. I've been in Sydney for about close to 20 years now, so since I moved when I was a 22-year-old, so yeah. And we've been part of New Life Christian Church for the last 4 years. And we've been really blessed to be part of New Life Church and to have fellowship with brothers and sisters like Shane and Mel and a whole lot of other brothers and sisters. Yeah, that's me and my family.
And what do you sort of do at church at the moment, you and Malathi?
Me and Malathi at the church, we are part of the hosting team or welcoming team. So that's one of the things that we do. I also serve in the kids church. That's another thing that we do. Apart from that, just help out where I can and Malathi can. So that's pretty much what we do at the moment.
I used to a lot in the background that a lot of people don't see, that people don't see or know about unless you're part of the catering team or events. So, no, we appreciate both of you. You both do a lot of behind the scenes stuff that helps us out as well, which is great. So, like for you, in India, 22 years, how was that growing up? And
yeah, so me and my brothers, I've got two brothers. My parents were Christians, so we were brought up in a Christian family. So my parents took us to church every Sunday. Growing up, a lot of Sunday school. We did a lot of singing where we can and serving. We did all the Christian things that we thought were Christian at that time. That was us growing up. I did, and then I did my bachelor's in India after school. Like I said, we grew up in a very loving family. My parents have always sort of put into us, all of the Christian values. Being respectful to people, being loving with everyone, and those sorts of things. But I personally never knew God on a personal level. Even though we're part of a Christian family, we went to the church and we did all the things that we consider as Christian. I never had a one-to-one relationship with Jesus. I never felt the need for it as well at that time. So yeah, that was life in India. Yeah.
And what sort of spurred you to want to move to Australia? Did you have people that you knew here, or you just came up with the idea yourself?
When you go to university in India, and most universities, a lot of the people, a lot of the students at that time, especially when I was going to the uni, were keen to move out of India.
Okay.
For better education and better jobs and stuff like that. It's not that India didn't have good jobs at that time, but somehow, just people and students at that time were geared up to sort of leave India, and then it just sort of feels natural that when you are with all of those, students, like-minded people. It same happened to me, and then I actually tried to go to the US first. That was our first preference, and I think most people most students in India want to go to US first for some reason. And I couldn't get a visa to US to study. So I was applying for a student visa to do masters, and I couldn't get that. And then someone suggested Australia. And I wasn't really planning to come to Australia, but there are lots of consultants in India who sort of help facilitate going overseas to study.
Really?
And
good.
I met someone by chance because one of my mates was going to the UK and he wanted to get some documentation. So I went with him to one of these consultants who then said, why don't you go to Australia, it's a pretty good country, etc, etc. And then I applied and I got the visa and everything, and yeah, and that's how I moved to Sydney in 2004. 2004, yeah.
And were you
study.
in Malati together at that stage, or
No, so I didn't know Malati at that time. So I moved here by myself. I did have a couple of friends that I went to uni with, so I moved with one of them here. So I was all sort of by myself, which was a big move for us because you know, growing up in India and just having, you know, family around and just moving overseas from India. And I did work for a little bit of time in India, but not a lot. So I mean, doing everything, just cooking, cleaning, basic things you would think, and also just working to you know, to make sure we cover our expenses. All of that wasn't easy because I've sort of didn't really do it previously, and didn't really have any family here, so I was just by myself and with a bunch of other mates, and a couple of other guys that we sort of met at university. So we're all from the same place, from Hyderabad in India, which we speak the same language. So 4 of us then rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Parramatta, and that's where we stayed for a couple of years. So that was sort of my journey into Sydney. My parents were generous enough to pay for the first semester fees, which was pretty big when you compare to, especially when you convert it into Indian currency. And that was it. Then I was here. That was in 2004. So that was my early journey.
So you've shared with me when I had lunch here with you that through that time it was sort of, you were sort of wild and
wild. I don't know, I would call myself wild. But, I think, look, you know, so you move to another country, there's a bit of freedom in terms of
lifestyle,
not having to sort of you know, explain things, not
minimal
having to
accountability,
that sort of things, and you know, and the people and my friends at the time, I didn't really have any Christian friends at that time, and like really good mates that really looked after me and all of that. But you know, my sort of values at that time were different. You know, I wasn't really never sort of went to church at that time. Probably for Christmas, that's pretty much it, once a year. You know, lifestyle, we didn't have a lot of money, but you know, we had you know, good friends. We used to go out, we used to, you know, do all the things that young people do, you know, drink alcohol and that sort of stuff, and never really got in contact with any Christians, or never really did any of those things. At least in India we did the basic Christian things like going to church and that sort of things. But when I moved to Sydney, even that sort of stopped.
It was like you're saying that you didn't have that personal relationship,
not at all,
and if you have that, that's what actually drives us.
Yes.
to, like you say, to then commit to
Yeah.
him, to commit to his church,
Yeah.
commit to his people,
Yeah.
is because we believe that he
Yeah.
loves us and
Yeah.
he's caring for us. And
Yeah. Yeah, so I did all those things which sort of young people at that age do, going to pubs and having alcohol and just not just having fun. Always did sort of make sure that my education side of things didn't drop, because there was a high price to pay if it failed.
Yes.
So we made sure that sort of things was okay. But yeah, I had a good time.
As we all did, bro. As we all did.
Which at that time I felt like I was having a good time. So that was, first maybe 2-3 years in Sydney, and I went back to, in 2007 I got my permanent residency.
Oh yes.
And then I went back to India for a few months because I just felt like
Time to go home.
yeah, it's been a really tough gig.
Yeah.
So I want to go back, spend some time with
Family,
home and family.
church.
And I knew Malati at that time, and I spent some time with Malati as well. A lot of time with Malati, and then when I came back, and
So how long do you think you were home for? 6 months?
I was there
12
for 5 to 6 months.
Oh yes, so that's a
it
good
was
amount of time.
pretty solid time,
Yeah.
and it was good because we needed that sort of break and family time, and then I spent some significant amount of time in Malati at that time as well, because we.
So how does that look in India? You had to go to her parents, or
Yeah.
you just met?
No, obviously, like I did go to and meet her parents, and we introduced each other, and we sort of her sister was my friend, and we sort of that's how we got introduced, and then we did spend some time with her, and obviously my family, and also a bit of time with their family as well. And I moved back after 6 months in search of a job, basically. And then I sort of got a job in IT at that time.
Where were you living?
I
Still
was
Parramatta?
I was still living in Parramatta, yeah. So we lived right next to Westfield.
Oh,
Being a student was very tough for us.
Would
We had the fees were pretty exorbitant, and we had to really work, and we could only work for 20 hours.
A week?
Overseas student, yeah, because we had a limit, so we couldn't work. 20 hours a week was just enough for our just living expenses, paying rents and food and travel. So during summer break, we could do full time because it was just holidays, and we were legally allowed to work full time during summer break. And summer break was 2 summers. I did 2 jobs pretty much. A job in the morning 6 to 4, and a job in the evening 8 to 12. I did night fill, where in clothes and
Stock in the shelves.
yeah, I did that. So I wasn't really used to it because I've never really worked in India. So studying and all of that. So a couple of years doing uni was tough. So and then when I came back from India, I was after a job in my profession. I did bachelor's in engineering, IT, and I did masters in IT as well. And got a job, which at that time I thought it was because of my skills. Anyways, long story at that time. Now I think differently. So we did so I got my job and I worked for a couple of years, and then I went back home to get married to Malati.
So you were having a long distance?
Yeah, so we were talking
For a couple of years?
a lot for a couple of years, yeah.
Was Skype and that around back then?
Mate, it was
Phone calls.
calling cards. You remember those?
Yeah.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
I didn't get a lot of minutes. Like they had advertised 100 minutes and 200 minutes, and you never end up getting those. So it wasn't at this time where you've got WhatsApp,
Videos
and
and
it's
everything,
easy.
bro. Yeah.
At that time, it was expensive exercise calling family,
Loves an expensive exercise, eh?
and so we did that a couple of years, and because I've been here for a good solid 4 or 5 years, and my parents were like, you're on your own. It's always difficult. You need a partner, and I think it's you should get married, and then we decided to get married. So we got married in India, in Hyderabad,
Yeah.
2009.
What does a wedding look like in Hyderabad? Massive.
Indian wedding. So
Massive.
Indian weddings are big.
Yeah, so how many people do you reckon came? 500?
No, I think it was like it's a
450?
lot more than that.
Oh, more?
Yeah, and
Are they long weddings?
I think Christian weddings themselves, they're not long.
Yeah.
Because you have the traditional, like you go to church and you get married in the church, and then you head out to a reception and you have the dinner and all of that stuff. Long, but not as long as some of other traditional Indian sort of weddings. So there was, I can't remember, I think it was like 1,200, 1,300 people. And we don't... And
The cousins of the cousins of the cousins of the cousins.
I think it's in Indian culture, like it's very, most people that get invited. So
Wow.
that's
You
just
knew a
the
lot of
culture.
people, didn't you?
I think a lot of people my parents knew and my
Yeah.
in-laws knew.
Yeah.
It's more them than us, because sure we've got mates and stuff like that, but they know.
Not
Well, you
1,300
spent a lot of your years back here.
Yeah, and then we got the funny thing is, what's tiring is you shake so many people's hands, and half of these people you actually don't know.
You know what would be funny if you had one of those clickers, what we had for
Yeah.
COVID? One, two.
Yeah, and half of these people you don't know. We don't know, but obviously
Yeah.
our parents would know them and stuff like that. But so we got married in January 2009, and she moved to Sydney in May 2009 because it takes a bit of time
Get the
to
visa and
apply for the
everything.
visa and all of that. And she was prayerful, and she knew God at that time, and she was praying for me, and then she used to read Bible, and then we started going to church because I'm
Back here.
Yeah.
God's cool like that, eh?
So we didn't, like I said, when I was here, other than Christmas, I don't think I've been to church for the 4 or 5 years that I was just by myself. But since she's come in, so we started going to church every Sunday. She made sure that we went to church. So we did Hillsong for a very long time until we actually found new life. We did Hillsong for good solid, good solid 10 years, yeah. And we were part of a Telugu, which is our community, the language, Telugu sort of fellowship. We meet once a month, and through that we met Naveen, brother Naveen, and Sumana and family, and a few other families. And then we started our journey. But for me, there wasn't a change for a very long time. I was just still doing. I wasn't doing the things that I did when I was younger, because at some point I did stop drinking alcohol and that sort of stuff, even before I became a Christian. But I was still doing just normal things, not really being a proper Christian. So we did go to church, and nothing really changed for me in terms of my Christian life. I was just still leading a secular, just normal sort of like
Tick in the box Christian.
taking the box Christian life. Do you go to church? Those sorts of
And that's the journey that God takes us on, that we have to realise, and He has to humble us to know that just because I'm living a life that still I'm a good person, still go to church, I still serve in the worship team, or I serve people, or that's not actually what God commands. The ultimate command is that we have to give ourselves to Him, and then all that other stuff means so much more to Him.
That's right.
You know, if you're doing it without being in that one-to-one relationship with Him, well, then it's almost in vain.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, I kept doing the same things, but my wife, kept praying for me and made sure that I stayed in touch with some of these Christian things, as not totally sort of deviate from that.
Because her as a believer, she would have known ultimately she couldn't change you.
Yeah.
That's why she would have been going to prayer. She would have been knowing that God's the only one who can change your heart.
And my parents as well. I think at some point my parents also sort of became serious Christians and accept and sort of offered their hearts to Jesus. They kept praying as well for me as well. All that sort of stuff. So and then we had Sammy in 2012. Sammy is our older son, and same thing. Nothing really changed. Josh, and then we had Josh in 2015. Even then, it wasn't.
Same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
Still not clicking.
Still not clicking. Still. It took me a while to. It took for me to slowly realize. I think I always say this when I give my testimony. I feel like my life was like a railway track. You see these two tracks. So it's just me and God. So we're never sort of close enough to have a personal relationship with God, but at the same time never far enough to realize the need for God. So that was
that's
me.
a good way of putting it.
So that was I feel I can really summarize sort of my life for a very long time like that, because I was in a Christian setting pretty much all my life, other than the 4 or 5 years I was here by myself. And I think 2019 is when slowly I think God was started to prompt.
So when you started at New Life?
No, that was not when I started New Life. No. 2019 I think is when slowly God started prompting small things, and then I started slowly sort of picking up the Bible and praying and that sort of stuff. I started sort of listening to some YouTube sort of videos of people sort of preaching gospel, and there was one preacher in India. His name is Zach Punan, and I started sort of, one of my mates introduced him to us, and then I started listening to his sermons. I think slowly, really slowly, that God then started working within me.
It was just like,
It was,
I've got him hooked.
it was a very gradual thing. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a. It just happened like all of a sudden. It was a very, very gradual thing, and so. When was your testimony? Was it 2020 or 19?
2020.
2020, yeah. So that was me, and slowly, very slowly, that I started to get closer to God, and it was, even that wasn't like it was a long drawn sort of process as well. took a while for me to really get close to God, and then I then sort of realized that the need for Jesus to be our personal savior, and then I decided to give my heart to Jesus, and I got water baptism in Hillsong.
Right
Even though, sorry,
You're already baptized.
yeah, even though as children we were baptized, I was very strong on getting the water baptism because I wanted to profess my faith and do it, and I was very, even though I got baptized as a child, I was very comfortable and happy to do it, and I did it. And some of my close friends who had prayed for me were there, people who journeyed with us. My mom and dad were there as well. They were visiting us here, and they were here for the water baptism. So it took God 38 years. It took me
That's
38.
crazy.
So I did that when I was 38. So yeah, it is.
But that
It
helps
is,
us understand the scripture when they talk about changing a man's heart from stone to a heart of flesh, a beating, loving heart that, and it's,
I just interviewed Naritis, and that's what he said. Like, his thing was like, oh, I said to him, what are these 5 words mean? And he's like, what does God mean to you? And he goes, love. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And he's like, well, God can change your heart from being angry and all that other stuff to just loving. Yes.
Yeah.
and that's it, like you're saying, it actually does take a lot of a process for a lot of us. It's not just a lightning bolt to the heart, and it changes to a, we read so much in scripture that happened in the past, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's not everybody.
I think and I've heard some really powerful testimonies of that happening, but it didn't happen to me, and it was just like a long process, and it was a very slow process, and there was lots of pitfalls, and there were lots of doubts, and
Definitely.
to overcome all of that, and then I did water baptism, and I gave my heart to Jesus, and then COVID stuck straight after in March, and that was the end of going to church because because of the restrictions and all of that stuff. And my parents were here; they were sort of stuck here to say so for 12 months. And then September, I think 2020 is when the sort of restrictions started to ease a little bit. And then to be honest, me and my wife, Martha, we both always prayed for a local church. We absolutely were blessed to be part of Hillsong, but we wanted something small, something local where we could really serve and we could be part of the body of Christ and part of the church. And I think the other thing about being born again and accepting Christ was, I thought it'd be like a flick of a button. Now that I'm born again, I'm gonna be like this holy man, and I'm gonna be everything's gonna be like God's gonna just make me this
Terminator for God.
Yeah. That's what I thought. It's just gonna be like that. I thought it's gonna be a flick of a button. That didn't happen, obviously.
Takes hard work.
And that was, I wouldn't say it was a shock, but it was, it was something that I needed to process, that it's actually being or accepting Jesus is the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
It's really the start.
Yeah.
And then there's a long sort of way until pretty much daily transformation, until we're here on this earth. And that was again I wouldn't say a shock, but it was something that I wasn't expecting. I thought it would be easier than